This video is about context. Context, if you're looking at your whole paragraph, it goes after the claim and it's before the evidence. So it's this green part right here in your paragraph. Your context is a summary of the text that gives background information to help readers know what's going on in the story. It's just background information about the book. How to write context, there are 2 steps. First, you write 2 sentences about the whole text. Then, step 2, you write 2 sentences about the specific scene in your quote. So what's happening where your quote appears. It should tell about who is involved and what is happening in that quote. So I'm going to give you an example. We're going to start with step 1, 2 sentences about the whole text. Say the novel is about 2 men, Lenny and George, who are working at a ranch in order to get a better life. George is quick and smart and cares for Lenny, who has a mental disability. Okay, so that is step number 1, 2 sentences about the whole text. Now I'm going to choose a specific scene, or I'm going to write my context for the specific scene. In order to do that, I need to have the quote ready. So I know that this is the quote I'm going to use for my context. It says, "No, he ain't, but he's sure as hell a good worker, strong as a bull." So in order to write a 2 sentences context that tells me what's going on in the scene, I would need to reread page 22 and know what's happening in that scene. Then I would say, in this scene, the boss asks why Lenny isn't much of a talker. So that happened right before this quote. Then I would introduce my quote. George says, "No, he ain't, but he's sure as hell a good worker, strong as a bull." So I'm going to see whether or not, I'm going to reread this time, seeing whether or not I have fulfilled the requirement of knowing what's happening and who is involved in this scene. So I'm going to read the whole context. The novel is about 2 men, Lenny and George, who are working at a ranch in order to get a better life. George is quick and smart and cares for Lenny, who has a mental disability. Okay, so that was step 1. 2 sentences about the whole text. In bold here is step 2. 2 sentences about the specific scene. In this scene, it is George and Lenny's first day of work. Okay, that tells me what's happening and who is involved. The boss comments that Lenny isn't a talker. Okay, so that's also telling me about who is involved and what's happening right when George says this. So now this part right here is evidence. So this part in gray is actually evidence. George says, "No, he ain't, but he's sure as hell a good worker, strong as a bull." So now I have written context that is 2 sentences about the whole text, 2 sentences about the specific scene, and it tells us about who is involved and what is happening in the quote when it happens in the book on page 22.